Voice, a podcast giving young people a voice in politics across the end of Ireland. So today we're joined by Jim O'Callaghan of Fianna Fáil. So welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Dermot. Thanks for inviting me on.
One of the first things I want to talk about is the big, I suppose, by-elections coming up. It's my first time ever really having experience with a by-election, so it's really exciting, and I think it's really interesting to see how all of the parties throw everyone behind it and really kind of just really put the whole party machine behind that one constituency. So it's really interesting. But I suppose I wanted to talk about what is the situation for Fianna Fáil there. What's happening.
Well, listen, you're right about by-elections. They sort of have their own momentum. And in a way, it can be tough on the candidates, whoever the candidates are, particularly the candidates for the larger parties, because they attract national attention. But in fairness, it's people who are running in an election in a small area, but they're subject to complete national coverage. So listen, it is an exciting prospect. It sort of happened out of the blue, as you're probably aware, Dermot. Owen Murphy was the Fine Gael TD for the constituency. He resigned about 3 weeks ago, and that means there has to be a by-election. Now, usually there's a bit of time for by-elections, and the by-election by law has to take place sort of within 6 months, or has to be called within 6 months of the resignation of the TD. But I suppose this by-election appears to be a bit different because the momentum is to try to have it in July. So yeah, people are getting geared up for it. Fianna Fáil is preparing for it like all the other parties. We're going to select an excellent candidate, Councillor Deirdre Conroy. She's a councillor for the constituency. Our nominations closed yesterday at 5 p.m. She was the only person nominated, and the selection convention is on Tuesday evening next. So we have our candidate in the field, and we're in the process of preparing posters, leaflets. I'm the director of elections, so if anything goes wrong, it's obviously all my fault, Dermot.
I suppose it's so interesting because I'm especially kind of very new to Southern politics and always followed the stuff up north, but only really since the last general election, it's I've only really started really following stuff in the Republic. So it's really interesting to see, and I'm actually so excited for what is something so inconsequential for really me, like an election in Dublin. But I'm so excited.
Well, I commend your excitement, and I'm glad to hear it.
And I suppose another thing I wanted to talk about was the kind of polling situation for Fianna Fáil, because we see polling every month or so, and I suppose everyone on Twitter kind of jumps, oh, what are the polls saying this time? And it seems that Fianna Fáil have kind of taken a dip in the polls, whereas Fine Gael, who are also in government, haven't. Like, it seems Fianna Fáil and the Greens have really been hammered in the polls, whereas Fine Gael are still holding steady up with Sinn Féin. So why is that? Like, you're in government together. You seem to be making a lot of these decisions yourselves. Like, how come Fianna Fáil have taken all of it, but Fine Gael haven't?
Listen, polls, as you know, go up and down, okay? And that sounds like the standard political response. But I think what it is reflective of is there's quite a volatile political environment in Ireland at present. Like, I remember 2 years ago, June 2019, just after the local elections, where Fianna Fáil did very well in May 2019. In June 2019, there was a poll, Fianna Fáil was on 30%. Other parties were considerably lower. We were the biggest party at the time. But obviously, you're right, in recent times, since the general election, but more specifically since the pandemic, Fine Gael's stock has risen in the polls. Sinn Féin went up, Fianna Fáil's dipped a bit. But listen, it's a changing scenario. The pandemic has obviously had a very significant impact on politics. I think politics will probably come back to some more level of normality in the next number of months. And I'm hoping, as people see the success, for instance, of the vaccination program here, the fact that the government has done a good job in difficult circumstances with the pandemic, that people will give Fianna Fáil the credit for that, in the same way as immediately after the pandemic, they seem to have given support to Fine Gael.
And how are things going with COVID down there? Like, I know the vaccine rollout is picking up a bit. Like, are we going to start seeing more? I know we're seeing more opening up, but like, is it going well? Like, would you say that we need to get more open up more, or is it going at that right pace?
Yeah, listen, I think we need to open up more, but listen, it's a difficult balance, okay? And, I think it'll be helpful at the end of this whole pandemic to look back and to do a review, not for the purpose of trying to blame people, because I don't think it's a situation where blame should be attributed, but to ensure that the next time, which hopefully I won't be around for, and won't be for a long time, that there is a pandemic, that we'll have a guide for that generation as to what mistakes we made, because unquestionably we made mistakes of what we got right. But we're at a stage now, Dermot, where the vaccination's been rolled out. Most people in their 50s have had one vaccination by now. Non-essential retail is opening up. We're probably a bit slower than other places. Okay, being frank with you, I'm not comparing us to Northern Ireland, because obviously the rollout of the vaccine there was, really good. But in comparison, I suppose, to other European countries, we're probably more on the side of caution than on the side of opening up. Now, listen, that may be the right decision. If numbers start going up in European countries, people will say Ireland's got it right. But just that would be my own view, that we see the consequences of the pandemic. They're very serious in terms of the number of deaths, the people in hospital, but we're not really yet seeing the consequences of the restrictions in terms of like youth unemployment, impact on elderly people, other aspects of healthcare. So it's a difficult balancing act for any government in any country, Dermot.
Absolutely. I know it is. It's definitely difficult to get it right, because I know anytime you make a decision, your one crowd's going to say, we need to open up, and then another's going to be saying we need to lock down. So God, I don't envy Micheál Martin and Stephen Donnelly being stuck up in Leinster House having to decide whether we're going to open up, because it must be difficult having to make those decisions.
Yeah, and as well as that, like the politics of COVID are quite interesting, not just nationally in Ireland, but internationally. But it seems to have become quite polarized. Like, I don't know why, is that there's groups who are very much in favor of, absolute lockdown. We need to stay in lockdown, be ultra cautious. And other groups who are, there shouldn't be any lockdown. Let's just get on with lives. And maybe just, it's like politics in the world. The extremes get heard more than people in the middle ground. But listen, it's been a difficult situation. I think on balance, the Irish government has done a good job in respect of it. It's also something that I think we need to recognise. Like, we don't have complete control over this. And people sometimes expect their government to be able to solve everything for them. Obviously, the primary duty of a government is to protect people as much as possible. But like when it comes to a pandemic or a sort of a natural event or a weather event, like, you can control it to a certain extent by protecting people, but you can't control everything. Like, we have limitations as humans, and that's something maybe politicians need to emphasize more,
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose one of the other things I want to talk about is Fianna Fáil itself as a party, because, a lot of people say Fianna Fáil's centre left, centre, down the centre. Some even say possibly edging to the right. And it's very interesting for me as someone that, is so interested in politics, but it is that bit more difficult for me to learn about Fianna Fáil because I am north of the border. So where would you place Fianna Fáil? Like, what, for largely as well for our northern listeners, what do Fianna Fáil stand for? Where is, I suppose, Fianna Fáil on that spectrum?
Well, my direct answer to you, I would regard Fianna Fáil as a centre ground, centre left national party. Our priorities are to reunify the country, to I suppose encourage enterprise and employment, to ensure that there is sufficient social protection for people who need the support of the state. We support Irish heritage, the Irish language, and we're committed to preserving the environment. So, like, obviously, Fianna Fáil as a party was founded in 1926. It's like everything, it's going to change from 1926 to today. No political party is the same today as it was back in 1926. But that's how I would place Fianna Fáil on the spectrum. But I suppose the most important part of it is that it's a national party, and it seeks to appeal to all groups. And like, that can be, people in modern politics can criticize that, saying, oh, you don't stand for anything, you're trying to appeal to everyone. But there is a benefit to being a national party, and we see it in other countries around the world. And if you lose a national party, well, then you're going to find politics predominated by smaller groups that are representing niche interests. And one of the beneficial things Fianna Fáil has done in its history, in my opinion, is that it's able to bring together large swathes of the Irish population behind certain political endeavours.
Definitely. And I suppose, actually drawing on, the idea of Fianna Fáil, the Republican Party, I was, I talked to a lot of, people from different backgrounds, and I come from a bit more of a nationalist background myself, and we were talking about, I suppose, the constitutional question in politics the other day, and when a border poll should happen. And there are so many different responses. Like some people are saying 5 years. I think Bertie Ahern, it might have been Bertie Ahern said, maybe 1928 for, the 30th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement. You've got some people are saying we're not ready. We need to wait 20 years. We need to really plan. And I think one thing that is sure is we don't want to make the Brexit mistake, and we need to make sure we are planned. So, do you think there is a time where we are getting ready for that? Let's actually go and push for this United Ireland.
Well, listen, I'm not caught up in dates, but I've said before, I think it's likely, based on demographic changes and just the political nature in Northern Ireland, that there'll probably be a poll in this decade, probably sometime in the 2020s. But listen, the date isn't important. You put your finger on it there, where you said that we don't want a Brexit situation. The last thing we want to do is for people like me, whose cherished aim it is to see United Ireland, to be called into a poll and somebody says, well, what's this going to tell us? What's this about? How's it going to operate politically, economically, socially? What cultural changes is it going to have? All these issues. And I'll be sitting there saying, well, actually, we haven't decided that yet. We can't do that. So it's really important that people such as me, who advocate for reunification, come and put out what I would envisage as being a United Ireland. Because it's not, I don't believe there's a point in doing this if it's simply going to be the case that we replace the United Kingdom with a United Ireland, and politics in Northern Ireland remains the same, and it simply becomes a takeover by the southern state of the north. I don't think it's worth doing it for that reason. I think it's worth doing it if we come together and establish a new country. Huge amount of work involved in this, Dermot. And at some stage, somebody's got to start doing it. So I would like to see more work done on it. I think maybe as a lawyer, I look to see, well, every country, the first thing that a new country needs is its constitution, which sets out what this country is about. And I think we need to start working on drafting a new constitution for a new country. And this it shouldn't be viewed in a threatening way by people from a unionist background whose perfect, legitimate and their cherished aim is to retain the link with the United Kingdom. But if I'm talking to unionist people, and I was recently talking to a unionist politician on BBC, and the interviewer said to him, what do you think of Jim O'Callaghan's proposal about a new country, a new constitution? And his perfectly legitimate response was, yeah, show it to me. So we keep talking about this. Oh, we're United Ireland. What are we talking about? Show it to people and let them see what we're talking about, and try and get engagement from other communities as to what it would look like.
I think that's definitely true. I think it is. We do need to actually engage. We had a debate the other day in politics class about whether we should have a new flag, a new constitution, and a new anthem. And one of the big things where it was well, we need a new constitution, but what's it going to look like? And we were back and forth over what it would actually look like. So I think we do need to start, even no matter what side of the community you're from. We could end up going into this and it's going to go one way or another. But I know me, I would rather go in and know what I'm voting for, because otherwise everyone's, United Ireland is going to mean something different to everyone.
Correct.
Or protecting the union is going to mean something to different one. Or we go in, we have a plan, and we all know what we're voting for or against.
Yeah. And listen, can I just say this? There'll be a very strong argument from the unionist side to say we should retain the union. And in a way, and I know it's difficult for unionist parties to engage in this, because they'll think by engaging in it that in some way they're, participating in it and implicitly endorsing it. But my view is that they should engage with it, because they can make their argument in favour of the union, and it should not be seen as something that is threatening. It's part of the Good Friday Agreement. It's a dynamic agreement. It provides for the people of Northern Ireland to vote on their constitutional status. We may not thought it was going to happen, but it's in the agreement, and it's something we have to prepare for. And I don't think we should feel threatened by it or intimidated by it. I think it's an exciting thing to talk about. And I spend a lot of my time, sorry, Dermot, if you want to shut me up, just tell me to shut up. But I spend a lot of my time as just a spokesperson for Fianna Fáil, talking to people whose family relatives were killed in the violence in Northern Ireland, okay, from all sides. And, in a way, I feel very helpless and inadequate when I'm speaking to them, because I know the likelihood is that they're probably not going to get the justice that they deserve and that they're looking for. But one of the benefits of doing the paper I did on United Ireland is that huge numbers of people from Northern Ireland contacted me from a unionist background or nationalist background, and it was such a positive discussion. And I'm not in any way trying to diminish the suffering and pain of the past, but like if we keep, and people your age, you should not be overshadowed by what happened in the past. You should be looking to the future with the excitement of seeing, well, it would be exciting to see what a new country would look like. And that's why I think concentrating on reunification or what the future should look like is so much more beneficial for all of us than looking at the past, even though it's so important, the past. But we can't allow ourselves to be overshadowed by the past completely.
Absolutely. I think it's so like, I know I just sit and I'm watching all of these different discussions and people are saying, oh, well, we can talk about what the constitution will look like. And it's like, oh my God, this is so exciting. Like, just even that idea of talking about such massive political like changes it's insane. Like, especially for me as somebody who's 17 and kind of records podcasts from his bedroom. And it's
good to hear that. But like, as well as that, like, people your age are different to people my age when it comes to politics as well. Like, I'm sure there are some people who are 17 who are very committed loyalists or unionists, or very committed Republicans and nationalists. But like a lot of young people, they're much more open and less prejudiced about their political preferences than people of my age,
Yeah, definitely. Like we were, I keep talking about politics class, but there is actually, I draw so much from, my actual class. And we were talking about who, would you give a vote to the Alliance Party? Because we're in South Armagh, like we're in a Republican stronghold. And it was actually surprising how many people said, yeah, I'd throw them a preference, or they could get my first vote. Like that neutral ground is something that's really, really prominent at my age.
That's funny, the Alliance Party, I remember when I was growing up, like the Alliance Party just wasn't, it was like it just have a small number, 3-4%. But I suppose the growth of the Alliance Party is reflective of how politics changes, And there are no guarantees in politics that political parties are always going to maintain their guaranteed hegemony. But things change politically. And I suppose the growth of the alliance is just something that no one probably predicted, but it is indicative of change in Northern Ireland. And once that change happens, it can go anywhere. Like, there's no party in Northern Ireland, I would have thought, can assume from now on that they're guaranteed with the support base they have. It doesn't work like that anymore, politics.
Definitely. But I know we're getting on for time. So we will wrap up there. But thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks, Dermot.
To all of our listeners, thank you for listening. And as always, you can read our blog at www.youthvoiceni.com, catch our Twitter at youthvoiceni, or catch our Instagram at youthvoice_ni. So as always, thank you for listening, and we will see you all next time.